Hi everyone, welcome to Konveyor community meeting. Today is October 5th and we abide by Konveyor code of conduct, which boils down to be nice to one another. This meeting will be recorded and available on the YouTube for later viewing. And I am going to paste the agenda in the chat again. Please add yourself to the agenda. The first topic that we have is from Jonah. So Jonah, whenever you're ready, take it away.
All right. So I've been doing a little bit of work on the Python provider for analyzer-lsp. I'm going to share my screen. Share screen. All right. Can everyone see it?
A little bit small. Looking good.
Yeah, so I just did a little bit of work on the Python provider for the analyzer-lsp. So I just wanted to do a little presentation, show you guys like a demo and such. So yeah, let's get started. So first off, this might be a review for a lot of you, so sorry if you tune out, but I felt it was important to talk about like the architecture of analyzer-lsp just so everybody's on the same page. So at its core, the analyzer-lsp, so we have some source code and some binaries over here, and we want to detect certain things such as deprecated APIs, anti-patterns, and the like. And so the way that we've elected to architect this is that we have some rules that formalize those things, such as whether or not we're using certain APIs, whether or not we're using certain functions and stuff, formalize those into a machine-readable YAML spec, and then pop it into the analysis engine, and then out pops a report. So I guess all this is machine readable so that we can input from Konveyor, other integrations, output from other Konveyor, other integrations. And so the question is, how do we actually do these analyses? And so within the analyzer-lsp, we've got these things called language providers. And each language that you want to support, or that we want to support, have a language provider. So for example, there's a Go language provider, a Java language provider, a Python language provider. And the way that we usually implement that is using this thing called the language server protocol, which I'll get to in a minute. But basically, the language server protocol, there's this huge body of work that deals with analyzing these languages already. If you use autocomplete in VS Code or any similar editor, you've already used the language server protocol. And so basically, we want to leverage that body of work in trying to analyze source code and binaries. And so you can see here, we translate the conditions into LSP queries. It's note that LSPs, using the LSP protocol is recommended, but it's not required. So if you wanted to do it in another way, you could. We just have found great success using the LSP. Of course, it's in the name, right? Analyzer-lsp. So an overview of the language server protocol. So it was originally developed by Microsoft to develop language intelligence tools for IDEs and editors. So for example, completions, warnings. If you right-click, you can go to a definition or find all the references, etc. These features are provided by so-called language servers. So there are a lot of examples of language servers. So Go Please for Go, JDTLS for Java, that's an Eclipse LSP, I think, PyLSP for Python. So there are a lot of different LSP servers. And so we want to leverage that in this whole analysis space. Yeah, they do a lot of legwork in analyzing source code. So you can see on the left, without LSP, prior to LSP, every single language had to implement a bespoke extension for each editor. But with LSP, as long as they both conform to the protocol, that is, the languages and the editors both conform to the protocol, it turns it into an M times N relation into just an M plus N relation. And so again, if you've ever used autocomplete in VS Code, you've used the language server protocol. It's very common. A little overview of the specification. So it's HTTP inspired. It's based upon JSON RPC. And you have requests and response. A request to a server consists of a method and its parameters. So over here, you can see we have this method called text document definition, which basically says, hey, I'm in this file at this position. Where's the definition of this symbol? And then the server returns a response saying, hey, the definition is actually in this file. Here's the start and end of that symbol that corresponds to that definition. So yeah, there's text document definition, there's workspace symbol, there's a bunch of different methods. And a server could support a subset of all methods. It can support all of them. It can support none of them technically, as long as it conforms to JSON RPC. So that's something that we have to keep in mind. But if we can create a generic provider, and we already have one, that conforms to the LSP spec, we could leverage nearly all existing language server protocol servers. So going back to that diagram, you could just keep slotting in new language servers and hopefully with minimal modification, add more support for more languages to this tool. So hopefully the path forward is clear. Extend the current generic language provider so that it can work with multiple languages without a hitch. And we elected to start with Python, or I elected to start with Python to iron out any potential kinks with that. So there are 3 main Python LSP servers out there. There's Pywrite. It's an upstream version of VS Code's Python support. Unfortunately, it might be deprecated soon, so I didn't want to really pursue that path. There's the Jedi language server. It's powered by the Jedi autocomplete framework, but I was having some issues regarding compatibility on certain systems. So what I ended up doing was exploring Python LSP server, often shortened as just PyLSP. So it's the most probable solution. One thing that I really liked about it is that it had many extensions, such as finding an @deprecated decorator within code. So that might be a really nice avenue to explore post this presentation. Unfortunately, it crashes when given an invalid request, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, this was the most probable solution to explore, and this is what I explored. So unfortunately, it seems to be very common with LSP servers that they don't quite conform to the protocol. So they're, it's great, but it still has some non-conforming responses. For example, this is a screenshot of the code that I have. And basically, in an initialize request, when you're first establishing the connection between the server and the client, the spec says that it has to be an array, but the PyLSP actually returns just a straight up object. So here, I created a solution, which is just create a shim within our JSON RPC implementation that just searches for a certain substring and then exactly replaces it. It's kind of like the Windows compatibility registry. It fixes syntax errors before actually getting to the decompilation step where it turns it into a Go object. There's probably a way more intelligent way to do this than a grep. So that's might be something to explore later. So next, when regarding analysis, one of the core functionality of these rules, if you've looked in the analyzer-lsp repo, is this thing called referenced. So we have like golang.reference, java.reference, and just this dot reference thing. So we want to, in order to do that, we want to extract symbols, get definitions in all references. And so there are a couple different methods that we can use. One is workspace symbol. Unfortunately, and it's what we're using now in the current generic provider, but none of the Python LSP support it because it's fairly new. And it would be great if they did, but they don't. So, such is life. There's also a fallback method where we grep for the token within all the files and then use text document definition to sort of go back to the definition and then feed forward to get every single reference. Golang, unfortunately, Golang does this differently than Python. So in the spec, there are multiple different ways that you can return a location, and Python interprets the spec differently than Golang. So there's something to keep in mind. And then finally, there's this thing called document symbol, which gets all the symbols of a document, and then we could recurse through the project that way. It's fine, but it's not very performant. So what I ended up doing was implementing the second method for this demo. I think the third option would be a good one to explore later, but right now the second option is what we're using. Regardless, we need to make sure that the LSP server has access to all of the dependencies. So the way that PyLSP does it is that it only looks in a certain folder. So we need to make sure that all the dependencies, aka a virtual environment, is in the same directory when doing the analysis. So here's my demo. So the question is, should I do a live demo? I recorded this last night.
Using recording's fine.
Recording's fine? Okay.
Yeah, you can use recording and just talk over if you need to.
Okay, perfect. All right. just turn up the playback speed a little bit and the quality up. So here we have the example Python project that we're going to analyze. So you can see here, I don't know if you can see that well, it's a little blurry, but we have 3 files, file A, file B, main.py. And then also here we have a virtual environment with everything installed via this import requirements.txt. So in file A, you can see we have this, it's importing from this other file, it imports hello world, and then we also have this object called dog, and it uses this method called speak. And so here are the definitions of those in file B. Hello world is just a top level method, returns hello world, and then speak is this method inside dog that just returns speak. And then as an actual example that you might use in like a real world use case, here's this file that just imports a bunch of stuff from the Kubernetes library, and then scroll down a particular interest, this create custom resource definition method. And it imports that from the stuff that's in the .env, or virtual environment rather. So moving along to the provider settings. So in analyzer-lsp, you have to provide a bunch of settings to tell the tool where everything is. So here you can see the binary path. We're actually using the generic external provider. And then the location of the folder that we're analyzing, the project we're analyzing. There's the actual path. So you can see pylsp, that's the name of the command. And then we're going to ignore any outputs from referenced that are in this pycache or .env, .vem folder, because otherwise then we get a bunch of references to things that really don't pertain to our project. Here's an example of the rule that we're going to use. So you can see referenced hello world, referenced speak, and then referenced create custom resource definition. So we're just going to detect where these are in the project. So you can imagine if you had like a deprecated function that you're using, it'd be nice to know where everything is. And now you can go to the output, and you can see in the output, going back to the files over here, that indeed this first rule was the hello world. And you can see file A, it detected hello world at line 3. Now it's actually 0 indexed over here because the LSP is everything 0 indexed. But the line number 2 corresponds to 3, 0 corresponds to 1 over here in file B. And then the second rule was the dog.speak thing. So that's on line 7, so line 8 over here, and then line 5, line 4 over here. And then finally in the real world use case with the create custom resource definition, line 27, it detected it in line 28. So there you go, that's the demo. One thing that, oh, actually undid everything. Okay. So some future areas of work. So right now, if you were eagle-eyed, you might have noticed that the .reference request was actually returning the definitions as well as the usages. So that's because pylsp handles the requests slightly differently than Go does, which is our reference implementation. I want to investigate that further and see if we can toggle that. Because otherwise it might get a little unwieldy with regards to certain things. I would also like to see if we can extend the generic provider capabilities beyond just this basic reference thing. Right now, it sort of is like a grep, but it's a little bit more powerful. I think once we can extend the capabilities beyond referenced, the true power of the LSP will shine through, because right now it is just sort of like just a grep. But once we have the actual information about each symbol and each location and where it is and the actual structure of the code, I think the true power will start to shine. And a good win would be to get this pylsp memstra extension working, which is, of course, that @deprecated API detector. So if you see the presentation, here are some links. So this is just the protocol, the LSP server, and then the actual analyzer-lsp. And then I created this document regarding this exploration. So the Python provider using the generic provider, just detailing everything that I did here. If you want to see in more detail, copy paste, try it on your own, etc. And then some future work stuff here. Any questions? No questions.
John, I just want to say this was great. Thank you.
Ramon.
No, it wasn't a question. I was just trying to find the emojis.
Oh,
Amazing presentation. I'm truly impressed.
And then I always have any questions. You can reach me, the Konveyor community. You can reach me in the Kubernetes Slack regarding any of this stuff. I'm usually hanging around in konveyor.dev or konveyor-dev. So yeah.
There's one interesting thing too, and Jonah goes to sleep about 3 or 4 in the morning.
Oh yeah, perfect.
And
so time zones are not an issue for me. I will
noticed
respond
that.
any time of day at any 24-hour period. I will respond.
We want you to last, Jonah. We don't want you to die, John. So you should sleep.
That's what weekends are for, you know. All right, well, that's it for me. Yeah.
Thank you, Jonah.
Thank you, Jonah. That was a great demo. And if anyone wants to learn more about analyzers, the work that is going on, the SIG has an office hour every Thursday that alternates with the community calls. It's at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. So you can pop in the meeting and learn more. So the next thing on the agenda.
One thing. I was a bit late to ask. So hope all over what you explained right now is available on your GitHub repo, and we can clone it to take it further for our experimentation.
Yeah, and actually, I have a PR up right now on the analyzer-lsp, like the actual like Konveyor repo. I just have to fix a few kinks, and then that should be merged hopefully soon. Trademark. But yes, the if you go into my my fork, if you want to do it like right now, it's under the Python exploration fork, Python exploration branch.
Great, thanks.
Cool. Does anyone have anything? I am going to just drop in the link to the repo and the agenda as well. Does anyone have anything? All right then. Next up is a topic from Dylan. Fast forwarding released O3 branches.
Yeah, maybe a bad title. Yeah, I just want to bring this up. We brought it up on planning last week. We were going to ad hoc cut another Alpha 6 before we cut the beta. I was kind of interested, based on what I saw the changes go in, specifically the label selector change that's going into the rule sets. I think it's worth cutting another alpha. I'd like to do that today because based on the conversations I was seeing yesterday, we were ready to merge those PRs. So whatever else we're interested in getting in before we cut Alpha 6, I was just going to ask that the maintainers of each of the repos, I can reach out in Slack too. We just need a fast forward of the release of 3 branches. We cut them a little early, as I said, on planning. So my apologies for that. I think there was a couple of reasons for it, but I think the easiest way to do this is just to fast forward all those branches, and then we cut Alpha 6 off of main anyway, probably, but I'd like that branch so we could tag it just to get a common state of what Alpha 6 is. So if you have anything that you're interested in for Alpha 6 and it's kind of like required to get in for some reason that I'm unaware of, let's just use Slack to coordinate it. But otherwise, I was thinking in like 2 or 3 hours, we'd go ahead and just cut one. So that's all I had, unless there's any questions or concerns about that. Okay, thanks.
So the new images for this or the Alpha 6 version, will it be published to the query repository or will it take some time to get released over there? And also on the OpenShift clusters?
Yeah, so generally what we do is when we cut an alpha or really any release, the upstream release pipeline works by first triggering off all the builds for this release. Those are all multi-arch builds, so they take a little bit of time. So once we actually kick off the pipeline, probably about, I don't know, maybe David's here can correct me, 2 or 3 hours until we submit. That'll automatically submit a PR up to the community operators repo. That PR goes to community operators, goes through its normal checklist. There's a lot of automation that goes through and verifies that the PR is good to get merged. Once it gets okay to merge, there's some automation that merges that in. That is very, that's not a consistent timeline that I've noticed. Sometimes it's very quick, sometimes it's like an overnight thing. So I expect that if we cut Alpha 6 today and like by noon Eastern, we're probably looking at sometime this evening that it actually gets published to community operators. But I don't know, it's very dependent. I don't know if David, if there's anything I missed there, but.
No, you didn't miss anything.
Cool. Yeah, so I would expect like 12 hours from when we cut it. Kick off the pipeline. I would say it's probably about 12 hours after that, but sometimes shorter. And we are going to be better about actually having a thread in the community Slack. Every time we cut these releases, we'll paste the link to the pipeline so you can at least track the whole progress. That'll eventually include the PR to community operators, and you can just watch that for when you actually want to see this thing get merged and test it out. So.
What should we have a mail sent to the community if we cut a release? Do you all think that would be helpful?
Absolutely. I think with the other alphas, it was pretty noisy, but I think we're now at a spot where we should be publishing these out. So yeah, if we want to send an email out for Alpha 6, then I imagine this is probably our last alpha before we cut beta. So I mean, I don't know, I could be wrong on that. You guys tell me if I'm wrong, but yeah, we should start sending emails for this beta 1, beta 2, or the release candidates, other one.
Sounds good. Slack can be noisy sometimes, so if we want folks to test it out or if folks are watching emails, so I figured that it might be another way that we can communicate. Please let me know if it's like too noisy or like if anyone has anything against it.
No, I like it. I don't think we're noisy enough, so.
I'm just gonna jot it down. Cool. So we have reached the end of the agenda. Does anyone have any other items that they want to bring up for discussion? Any questions? Anything conveyor related?
Do you want to talk about the sandbox stuff, Savita? Did we talk about that in the community call?
Oh, no. So thank you for mentioning that, Sean. So we had Konveyor got accepted into Sandbox in July 2022, end of July 2022, and we are done officially with all the onboarding steps, and we just completed it last week. And we also published a reflection post. Let me find that and share that here. Just give me 1 second. So I just want to extend thanks to all the contributors and all the supporters who made this part possible, and all the SIGs and all my team who worked hard on this. Thank you so much. Let me just share that post in the chat. So if folks are interested, please give it a read. It has fun facts at the end telling like we have so many new contributors and the amount of pull requests that went in 1 year. That's my favorite part, so I'm just highlighting that. In addition to everything else, I like numbers. So that's cool. Thanks again, Sean, for bringing that up. And on that note, I also want to mention that we have a kiosk at KubeCon for Konveyor. So if you're going to be at KubeCon and you want to learn more about Konveyor, so we have the CNCF has Project Pavilions where they showcase all the CNCF projects, and we have a booth for Konveyor. So please feel free to stop by and learn more about Konveyor. That's all for me. Does anyone have anything they want to add to that, or any questions?
I think I speak for everybody when I say thank you, Savita, for all the work that you are doing to make this community successful. Everything else, that you were a big part in getting all those things closed out. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you. Yeah, Mehmedi. And I also pasted the link to the onboarding issues. Anyone is interested in what the process is like and what they want to just get an overview. There are steps and everything's outlined, and it has links to governance and everything in case if you want to take a quick look at it and read about it. So that's the tracking issue. I will put them all in the agenda too. Thank you, folks. Does anyone have any other topic that they want to bring up?
Maybe again one from me. What are the different kinds of talking specifically around Python? What are the different things we need to be keeping in while creating the custom rules?
I think that's aimed at me. So I guess maybe could you be a little bit more specific? Like, what do you mean, like keeping in mind?
Okay, which means hard coding of IPs, maybe some URLs or images which are pointed to the local machines. These are the generic stuff which you already have covered as part of your Java. Something we can translate them to the Python as well.
I think it should be you shouldn't really have to worry about that sort of stuff. Because basically the way that the LSP works is that if it determines that a symbol should be returned, then it will return it. It's not necessarily if it finds a certain text, then in the substring or whatever, then it returns or whatever. It tries to go based on symbols or tokens rather than anything that's hard coded. How about we sync in the Konveyor dev channel for a more detailed discussion about what specifically you're looking for? I think that would be a good place to start.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question. Are you thinking about the Python language provider, or are you thinking about writing rules for Python once the language provider is there? What's the orientation?
The writing rules.
Writing rules.
Okay, and eventually, there would be certain pre-baked rules as part of the releases, the language provider. On top of it, we write our custom rules. So if suppose there are certain generic things which gets covered as part of other languages, because we know that Java is already quite mature. Yeah. If in a similar manner, we cover as part of the Python, and then we know that, okay, these are the baselines which is already covered, and we concentrate our energy to something more productive.
I would say the very first thing, the very first test rule set that I will work on will be translating the containerization rules from Java to Python, the stuff that applies to Python. Because the containerization rules are not related, the ones that we have in Java are just enforcing the 12-factor application principles for Java application. So it's just a matter of taking a look at those and understanding what makes sense in the context of Python and creating the rules. I will also say maybe what customers might be interested the most in will be basically Python upgrades related rules. Those are usually the things that we've seen. For example, OpenJDK upgrades, everyone is very interested in one. Application server upgrades, all that stuff. I understand that Python upgrades are not so, not so straightforward and easy. So I will focus on that. But yeah, that's just me.
Thanks for your input.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just going to add that there are some rules like existing even for Java apps. We have providers like built-in, which provide file content searches, file searches, and XML queries. A lot of those rules should just work for Python apps as is, which are not making queries to the Java server at all. I just brought it up because hard-coded IPs is example of that kind of a rule.
But still, we need to write rules for them, right? Or sorry, a little more guidance would be helpful. How does that actually helps? Like these are two different languages. Does the rules for Java automatically apply to Python as well?
Not the ones which are doing code searches in Java, but there's providers that are just looking like that are just basically doing a grab to find hard-coded IP addresses or something like that. Those should just work.
Okay. Thanks, Vinod.
Does anyone have any more questions? I'm going to just drop in the link to community README, which has links to the ways of communication and how to reach out to Konveyor team folks. So in case you're wondering, just that link has all the information that's needed. I'm gonna give like few seconds before I close this meeting out. So if you have any topics, please feel free to bring it up. Hi, folks. That's all the silence that I can deal with. So maybe I should just have some music which I can just play while everyone's like silent or like contemplating to bring up something. That would be amazing.
Get like
Or
a Steam
just
Deck.
ramble.
Yeah, get like a Stream Deck or something.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today's meeting. Thanks for the demo, Jonah, and thanks for all the lively conversations we had today. I will see you all in 2 weeks. And if you have any questions, please feel free to post in Slack, email, and there are many ways to reach us. So,
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
we do have someone raised their hand, I think. Oh, they left. Okay. Sorry about that. I saw someone raising their hand. So, cool. All right. Bye.